Now, if you watch the first episode, I outlined why I feel it's very important that you do your homework when you're wanting to learn how to protect yourself and you're going out there and you're looking for somebody to teach you. The points that I made there was I think it's crucial that the person that you're learning from has the background and the experience in the fray of interpersonal violence, right? So they've actually been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. I did say that with a caveat that, of course, that doesn't mean that somebody cannot teach you really functional and effective approaches and strategies to keeping yourself safe, even though themselves may have not come from a background where they were immersed in dealing with interpersonal violence. But at the very least, they need to have trained with those who have. Now, with that said, what I want to do is I want to expand that first episode into a mini series where I'm going to focus on this idea of self-preservation. What actually do you need to know? How do you need to think about it? What kind of philosophical implications are required and mindset changes in order to keep yourself safe? I'm hoping that the way that I'm going to structure this is going to give you a very good framework to understand yourself and how you situate yourself within the realm of keeping yourself and those that you love safe, but also hopefully an educational tool that will make you a more discerning customer of self-preservation information, right? Because there's a lot of stuff out there, and when you are looking out there, it's not always that easy to make the distinction on what is actually going to be real, like this stuff I can actually use, versus what is often 99% of the stuff that actually, when it comes down to it, actually is not going to help you out. So in order for me to do that, of course, I need to give you an overview of my perspective, where I'm coming from, how things have changed for me over time, how I look at self-preservation today versus potentially how I looked at it even a decade ago or longer before that. Included in that is I have to bring forward some terminology, the way that I describe things. Now, some of the words and the definitions and the way that I describe things might be similar to other people, but in other respects it might be very different. So with that said, let's first start off with me discussing how I view myself when you come to me. For example, if you were a potential student and you wanted me to teach you how to protect yourself, how would I define my role in our relationship? Now, I don't define myself, and if I had in the past, I no longer do that, but I definitely don't define myself anymore as a self-defense instructor. I view myself as a personal threat management consultant. Now, the reason I'm using threat management is because the way that I view self-preservation is that it is more than just simply your ability to develop the physical skill sets. As important as those are, and of course you need to develop those, that is only a part of a whole picture. It's not the whole picture in of itself. And that's one of the problems I have within the world of reality-based self-defense. Unfortunately, because many of the people, as I described in the first video, have no background in understanding self-preservation. They've never actually been there. Their proving ground, so to speak, is the dojo. The way that they teach, their pedagogy is incorrect, so they don't actually have an appropriate teaching approach to understand the realities of interpersonal violence. The thing that's the easiest thing to do then is to teach the physical skill sets. To be quite honest, if I want to bullshit you, if I want to misdirect you from the reality of interpersonal violence, the easiest way for me to do that is through physical skill sets, because there I can teach you lots of cool looking shit, set it up in a situation where actually I can never make a mistake, or you can never really make a mistake, and so it looks good on paper, right? But in reality, when you're actually on the ground, and if you ever had to deploy that, you're gonna be hit with the stark reality that much of what is taught, even within the physical realm, is not going to work in the reality of interpersonal violence. A lot of it has to do, not necessarily per se with the technique, but it has to do with the intention behind that technique and the experience that you're going to find, the environment that you're going to find yourself in, which is hinged to the way that it was taught to you. So the pedagogical approach, the way people teach, isn't the right way. So physical skill sets are important, but it's a very, very small part of the big picture. In actual fact, and here's the thing, right? When we talk about self-preservation, and I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper, but when we talk about self-preservation, true self-preservation is doing things before a threat situation ever materializes. So it's all the things, the homework that you do beforehand, that ultimately, if you did it correctly or to the best that you possibly could, if all the stars align, you avoid getting yourself into a situation where you have to deal with a human threat, for example, to begin with. So avoidance, not even being there, not even getting into that situation, actually is the ultimate goal of self-preservation, right? So one of the issues I have with the term self-defense is that when I hear those words self-defense, to me it's reactionary, meaning that I haven't done my homework. I haven't done all the things I could have done to negate this threat from materializing, and now I'm in a situation that I have to deal with interpersonal violence. That's self-defense. I'm now defending the self, and it's reactionary. Self-preservation, on the other hand, is doing all the homework, everything that could possibly be done to mitigate the threat that I might have to face, so that hopefully it never materializes. In actual fact, in my experience, in most instances, if you do your due diligence beforehand, it's almost never that you have to find yourself in a situation where you actually now have to go hands-on with that threat. And even then, right, there are times and moments where, unless it's an ambush, of course, and it was completely out of your ability to do anything to prevent it, even in an argument, for example, arguments don't have to ultimately end up becoming a physical altercation. And even if somebody starts off aggressive and seems like that's what they want to do to you, they want to physically attack you, I've seen more times than I can remember, and I've been in those situations myself, with just some adjustment on how you approach it, for example, through verbal jiu-jitsu, how you talk to somebody, that you can de-escalate a situation that had the potential to become physical, but by you purely deploying something completely different rather than a physical skill sets, you're able to walk away from it. So at this point, the main thing that I want you to focus on and take note of for this video is I need you to make, from the beginning, a distinction. Right in the beginning, you need to make a distinction between ego defense and self-preservation. They are not the same thing. So anytime you are watching a video of somebody out there suggesting that by doing this you're going to be able to protect yourself, look at how they are situating and framing that experience. Oftentimes, what you're going to notice is that the way that this is going to be dealt with is going to be a physical response, right? But when you look at that response, look at what is the context that they're drawing that from. For example, just the other day, this person was teaching the specific sequence on preemptive striking. So if you don't know what preemptive striking is, in essence, and I'm sure there'll be people who argue with me with this, but in essence, what preemptive striking implies is that you pick up a potential threat, this person who wants to potentially, and this is the thing, potentially, because they haven't yet, right? Potentially wants to do you harm. You recognize that by how they are using their body posture, the things that they're saying to you. They may even be telling you that they're going to do harm to you. So they are telling you that they're going to physically do something to you. You're hearing all of that. You see the person moving towards you. And a preemptive strike would suggest that you eliminate that person, that potential threat. Remember, it's potential because it hasn't happened yet, right? So you're preempting that person's ability to do a physical action towards you. So if they're going to physically assault you, you're going to intercept them first and you're going to take care of them and you're going to neutralize them. That's what we mean by preemptive striking. Okay. There's so many problems with this, right? With the video that I watched, right? So this person's being aggressive, moved towards you, and then the person teaching, this instructor, who's very well regarded and has lots of people that pitch up for his seminars and stuff and buys his courses, his attitude is, destroy this threat before it even becomes a problem for you, before this threat becomes a physical response towards you. Now, that's all and well if you can guarantee, first of all, that you can do that. That's the first thing. Are you even capable? Do you even have the physical skill sets to neutralize it? How do you even know that? You have no idea on this person that's been aggressive towards you what they are capable of as well. So we can play so many scenarios here, right? I say, okay, do a preemptive strike. What happens if it fails and the person that you just did it against is a highly skilled practitioner of the physical skill sets, more so than you? Now what? You can think of what the consequences are going to be. Let's talk about being in the Western world where there are laws and there are cameras and people are filming these situations. The person being aggressive towards you, as uncomfortable as it is and as fearful as that may be for you, if you do a preemptive strike, you're no longer the person that's defending themselves. You are now the assailant. So I can go on and on and on and on about how many things could be wrong with that particular situation, right? When I look at that kind of approach, to me, that has nothing to do with self-preservation. More than likely, what it's about is about ego defense. Meaning that I don't want to be seen to look weak, or to be embarrassed, or to be dissed or disrespected. And this person's doing that. And so I'm going to teach them a lesson. I'm going to neutralize that, right? And to put it under the guise of saying, well, you need to neutralize that threat before that threat physically assaults you, again, isn't the best way to do things often, because for all the reasons that I said, right? I don't know who this person is. I don't know their skill sets. Is it one person? Do they have friends? Are their friends standing on the side that I don't know about, waiting to see what happens when they see their buddy lose? If you do manage to win, are they not all going to jump in? And so what you thought was a one-on-one fight now becomes a mass attack. When you thought it was a one-on-one fight in the beginning and there were no weapons involved, when this guy loses, he goes to the next level because he realizes he's losing and he pulls out a weapon that he had on him all the time and you didn't know that. I mean, again, you can see how this thing can go from really bad, right, to the worst fucking experience of your life in a microsecond. So if you're thinking it like that, then it makes no sense that that should be primed in your head as your response. Okay, now, that's not to say that there isn't going to be a time when I physically have to use my physical skill sets to defeat a threat that's attacking me. All right, so there's going to be those moments of times. But here's the thing, pulling it all the way back. If I'm thinking not to defend my ego, right, but I'm thinking self-preservation, right, self-preservation, to preserve the self. So if I'm thinking self-preservation to preserve the self, there are so many things that I could have done that I hope would have put me in a position that I never landed up there. And that's not to say even if you did that you wouldn't land up there, but remember what I said. It's about the work that you do before you even get there. And you want to try as best as you can to mitigate any potential threats against you, right? So, for example, that situation could be happening because I'm in the wrong place and I shouldn't be there. And it's a noted place for violence, right? If I don't go there, or I can find another way to do what I need to do somewhere else, then I don't ever get myself into that situation. So that's an example, right? If I had no choice but I had to be there, or I was there and I didn't think that that was going to happen and it has happened, and now I do have somebody in front of me that is physically threatening me, my response shouldn't be to go to a preemptive strike, to go physical first, for all the reasons that I just mentioned. What about talking to the person? What about using verbal jiu-jitsu first? What about seeing if there is a way out of this, right, without actually going physical? Now, I realize, especially for guys, that's not glamorous, right? Nobody likes that. We walk away from that experience and we go, oh, I should have fucking taught that guy a lesson, and you have that shit running around. But that's ego defense. That's my point, okay? If you're thinking self-preservation, I don't want to be in a situation where I have to get into a fight with somebody. I definitely don't want to get into a situation where I don't know where this thing can go and I can ultimately, lose my life. I don't want to be here. If my starting point is I don't want to be here, then I'm always going to start off from a different perspective, because then I'm going to look at all the other possible things that I can do to not be there in the first place. So that's what I mean by self-preservation. What can I actually do so I don't have to be here? And the physical side of it is one part of it, but if I can avoid that, that's even better. Because here's the thing, right? You get into a fight, and even if you win, nobody on either divide is going to come out unscathed. You're still going to have to get hammered. You're still going to take punishment. You may even get severely injured just to get out of that, right? I mean, I've been in situations where I've had to protect myself, and it's ended up what I thought was a one-on-one, ended up being multiple opponents. And I remember one night distinctly where at the end of the situation, I left that fight with a broken nose, a blue eye, 3 cracked ribs, and aches and pains for weeks. The point is that I didn't leave that situation, even though I came out relatively on top, so to speak. I didn't really come out on top ultimately, because I ultimately left with a lot of injuries. So the point is that, and what I did try to do that night is I did try to deploy everything I possibly could not to let it go to that, but ultimately it did, and that's what I mean. And there, if you've tried everything you possibly can to keep yourself safe and remove yourself from the threat, and no other options are available, and you have to go physical, then that's what you have to do. But for that one example, I can bring up another 9 examples, so 9 out of 10 times, where I never had to go physical with somebody, even when I was working the door, because just the way that I approached it and using my words and the way that I presented my body, not in an aggressive way, and I used my, a good attitude, ultimately was able to de-escalate the situation, and nobody got into a physical fight. And that's the ultimate win, right? And even then, like let's say I get into a physical altercation. There's no choice, I have to. If I've primed my mind saying that I'm here to protect myself, self-preservation, and I don't want to be here because I don't want to be in a situation, my first thought is, once I've got to the point where I feel like I've neutralized this threat enough that there is some space that I can make, I'm not going to stick around now to continue the argument. I'm going to get out of there. I'm not going to stick around there to continue the fight. I'm going to get out of there. That's my thinking. So self-preservation is this. I do everything I possibly can to mitigate a potential threat from arising. Right? So for example, if I'm going to a part of the world that I don't know, I'm going to do my homework before I get there. Right? What are the predominant crimes right now? What are the things that I need to worry about? I'm landing at this airport. Is there anything I need to know about the airport that might, put up a red flag? I'm going to look at the airport design. I'm going to look at where I'm landing. What do I need to do to get to the point to get the cab or whatever that may be, so I know the lay of the land. I'm going to do all of that stuff, right, before I even get there. So that's what I mean. That's a better preemptive strategy than saying I'm going to preempt somebody that wants to do me harm with a preemptive strike. A better preemptive strategy is doing everything beforehand, so you never have to be in that situation that you have to go physical with somebody, right? So doing your homework beforehand mitigates a lot of the potential of that threat materializing. Then even if I do find myself in a threat situation, I'm going to think about all the potential opportunities available to me to not engage with that threat in the first place. And at any moment in time that there's a moment for me to move myself away from that threat, to take myself out of that threat, I'm going to take it. So if this guy's arguing with me and I'm using verbal jiu-jitsu and suddenly he's distracted, that's my time, and I'm going to get out of there. And I'm moving to the exit. And that's another thing, right? When I come into a place that I don't know, do I know where the exit is? Do I know where the best place to go is to get out of here should a problem arise? And so when we talk about personal threat management, we're not just talking only about, somebody that wants to do you physical harm because you bumped into them in a bar and they got upset because you spilled their drinks. Personal threat management is across the board. What about terrorist attacks? What about doing all that you possibly can so that you don't become a victim in a terrorist attack? I can go on and on and on. So it's a huge umbrella term when we talk about self-preservation, right? But when you look at what most people are teaching in quote-unquote reality-based self-defense, as I noted, look very carefully, it's actually got nothing to do with self-preservation. They never suggest what I've just suggested in this video, right? That idea of, oh, this guy gets aggressive with you, starts moving towards you, kick him in the nuts, then ram your elbow into his face as a preemptive strategy. What has that got to do with self-preservation, right? What the better way would have been, okay, this person's getting really aggressive with you. They're moving towards you. Get your hands up, put a barrier between yourself and them. Get off the X, because you know that they're going to have tunnel vision, so get off to the side so it's harder for them to get a key in on you. While that's happening, use verbal jiu-jitsu strategies to attempt to de-escalate the situation. And at any time in that experience that you don't want to be in, an opportunity arises that you can move yourself away from it, move, get out of there and exit. That's the strategy. That's a self-preservation strategy, right? So I'll explore this more. Gone a little bit longer than I wanted to on this video, but hopefully that gives you some idea, some context on where I'm coming from. But I'm going to mention these ideas multiple times because I want you to think of a different approach when we talk about self-preservation versus ego defense, right? So fine, if somebody wants to teach stuff, don't put it under the rubric of self-defense or self-preservation. Call it what it is. This is ego defense, man. I don't want people to diss me. I don't want to look bad in front of everybody else. I have low self-esteem. Whatever your fucking issues are, and you think that the only thing that you can do is, physically annihilate this potential threat in front of you. Because 9 times out of 10, like I said, it's potential. And if it's potential, it always has the opportunity to change, right? The only time that you have no other choice but to do what you need to do physically, right? And even then you have to think cognitively about things that are happening around you and plan as this is happening on what your next move is going to be. That's when you use your physical thing, when there's no other choice. But even in that moment, you're still thinking, how the hell do I get out of this? Where do I go to now to get myself away from this? That is what I mean by self-preservation. Hopefully you got something out of that. Leave your comments in the comment section below and look out for the next video.